Welcome to Fresh Takes on Tech, where we explore innovation and technology shaping the fresh produce industry. Hosted by Vonnie Estes, Vice President of Innovation at the International Fresh Produce Association. This podcast brings you the brightest minds and boldest ideas, transforming the future of fresh. In this episode, we dive into game-changing technologies in energy, water efficiency, and disease detection. Sarah Placella from Root Applied Sciences explains airborne pathogen detection for smarter disease management. Bryce Buesing of RDI shares how plant responsive irrigation optimizes water use. Salvador of Mirai Solar discusses photovoltaic shading for energy generation and crop protection. Enjoy the show.
So I'm going to start with Sarah and have you introduce yourself and your company and what you're working on.
Thanks, Vonnie. It's great to be here. I am Sarah Placella, founder and CEO of Root Applied Sciences. I'm an academic by training, but I moved into industry about a decade ago, and I have been working for biotech companies at AgTech startups, and I started my own, Root Applied Sciences, where we have developed this amazing technology that allows us to analyze organisms in the air, even organisms that we can't see, like spores and very small insects, bacteria. So we actually collect particles from the air and quantify organisms by their DNA, and that allows us to understand, in an agricultural setting, pathogen pressure. When is a pathogen around, and how big is the threat? So historically, we haven't had that ability, and growers have been forced to spray pesticides prophylactically to protect their crops. But now we have this technology that allows us to know this. We call it the third corner of the disease triangle. So we talk about in pathology having the presence of the host, the crop that you're growing, the environmental conditions for the pathogen to develop, and then the pathogen itself. And in the past, there's been no way to know how much pathogen is around, but now we know, is it there and how bad is it? Originally, we thought that this would help growers really just with their spray plan. What do I spray? In terms of when is the pathogen around, when do I start, and then being more responsive instead of reactive. But we're also finding that it's helping growers with their scouting and with detection earlier than they could before, because what we have is a sensor network, and our average grower has 4 units, so 4 monitoring systems, and they're able to look at them on the landscape and see how much pathogen there is in one area versus another. And when they see it go up in one area, then they're able to pinpoint where an incipient infection is and actually find infections that they say they never would have found otherwise.
So where are they placed? Are they placed, the sensors on the ground or on the plant or up in the air? Or?
We place the sensors just above the canopy, and that allows them to detect the pathogen that's coming in from far away, as well as any pathogen that could actually be in the crop that's getting moved by the air.
So it's sensing, it's kind of sampling and sensing, and then how does it know what the pathogen is?
So we use a DNA amplification based approach where we use primers. So we determine the organism of interest in terms of how specific do we need to be. So for something like grape powdery mildew, which is somewhere where we have a lot of experience, we designed primers that detect all grape powdery mildew, but no other powdery mildews. So we can be specific to grape powdery mildew. And actually, there's been over 40 types of powdery mildew detected in a vineyard. So being very specific allows the grower to spray only when they need to, but being broad enough that we don't have to worry about the powdery mildew being a different strain. Mm-hmm. In other cases, we may choose to develop a primer set that's more broad, that will get a whole genus of organisms. So we can think about, for instance, Bacteriosphaeria, where there can be many species within a genus that could cause a problem, and we can design broader primers that will detect all Bacteriosphaeria.
So how do you do that? When, say you're going into a new crop and there's a different pathogen that attacks that crop, how do you go after that? And do you do that work in a lab to try to?
We do a number of things. First, we really look at what's the potential for us to help the grower. Is this something that they spray multiple times? And is the spray expensive? Because if it's one time that they spray and it's inexpensive,
Do that.
and they may have to spray anyway if we
Yeah.
detect it, then it's not a low-hanging fruit for us or for the grower. So that makes it a lower priority for us. But once we decide, yes, this is a good opportunity, we actually collect sequence information. So GenBank has a lot of sequence information. We can also sequence things ourselves. So we collect sequence information not just for that organism, but for related organisms so that we know how specific we really are. And we design many primer sets and we test them and we make sure that they are sensitive and specific, and we choose the one that's more sensitive while still being specific and also broad enough to get the diversity of organisms that we want to get, the sequences that are around. And then we also make sure, of course, that it's compatible with our automated system. So we have been in the field for 4 years with a collect and send technology where we do this assay that we've automated into the device in the lab. And now we have automated prototypes. We have 2. But we're working towards launching fully automated systems. And we want to make sure that the assays we select will be compatible with that technology as well.
So how many disease crop complexes do you have ready now?
We have 4 pathogens and 1 insect pest.
And what's the commercial timeline before you'll have something out that growers could buy if they wanted to buy something?
So we are commercial with our monitoring system in grapes, but it's a collect and send system. And then in 2026 is when we expect to launch the automated systems. And we'll do a small launch first, probably keep things in California, which is where we're based, and perhaps have a few pilots elsewhere, primarily also with the targets that we already have, just because we already have information, not just on the system and on that target, but also on understanding what that means for a grower. So once we have a good quantification of an airborne pest or pathogen, the next thing is really, well, what does this mean from a management standpoint? And we have a lot of experience with that now for grape powdery mildew, and we're gaining some experience for some of these other pests and pathogens that we have data on. And it makes sense for us in 2026 when we launch the automated system to do it where we're able to provide clear insights as well.
So you were part of our Freshfield Catalyst Accelerator. It was great to have you in the program. Can you talk a little bit about what that experience was like for you and some of the tangible benefits that you got from being in the program?
It's been really great. Thank you for including me and selecting Root. Meeting the growers has been great, and seeing a diversity and really understanding the whole food system. I have more experience in the field, but seeing what goes into the processing and the packaging and this giant machine that gets us food at the supermarket has been really awesome. The best thing, however, has been the people. So great job selecting cohorts with great people. Being a startup founder is hard, and it's great to be part of a community where you have people who are rooting for you and support you, and you can ask questions. I really feel like we have that. So.
Great. Oh, that's really nice to hear. I mean, you never know, anybody who has done school field trips or anything, you never know what the group dynamics are going to be. But I think that everyone is working with a technology they're very passionate about and trying to build something. I think that makes you close to each other just to start with. So it's really great to see.
And I think everybody's really motivated just to do better for the world.
Yeah. I think that's the thing. So you're here at the show. We haven't officially opened yet, but what's your sense of being here at the show, and what do you hope to get out of being here?
I hope to meet a lot of new people and learn their perspectives. So we have been focused on technology, but now that our technology development is going really well, we're starting to switch gears in terms of commercialization. So I hope to be able to meet with a lot of folks and understand how they see the technology, how they see the value propositions, and what they need from us, also in terms of materials, to make this something that's easy for them to support in their organization. So that's one of the things that I'm hoping to get. If there's any sustainability folks listening or other people in an organization that you want to incorporate our technology and you have some ideas for how we can make it easy for you, please come TA5 and let me know.
Excellent.
The show is really awesome. I was just earlier today setting up my booth, and I just couldn't believe not only how big it is, but how beautiful it is. I
Yeah.
mean, some of these flower arrangements too are like nothing I've ever seen before. They're
It's
so impressive.
such a beautiful industry. I mean, you really get the sense of that here when you walk through and just see just all of it, the flowers and the fruit setup and everything. And it's
The
really,
food too.
yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, it's really nice. Well, thank you for coming and being on the show. And thanks for the listeners for listening to our podcast. And we have more to come. Thank you.
Thanks.
So I have Bryce here, and I'd introduce yourself and talk about the company and what you're working on.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me. I am with RDI, which is Responsive Drip Irrigation. It is actually the world's only truly plant responsive irrigation system, and I'll kind of elaborate on how that works. Basically, each individual plant, it can match the consumption rate that the plant needs in terms of water. The system will react and deliver that precise amount of water that each individual plant needs. Now, when I say it like that, it sounds like there's a lot of technology and sensors and controllers and all this, but the best thing about it is it's 100% natural. It's based in organic chemistry, so there's no controllers, valves, sensors, electronics, any of that stuff. So
Say more about that.
yes, I will. Basically, it's a subsurface microporous tubing. You know, there's soaker hoses and things out like that, similar to that, but it's infused with a hydrophilic polymer. So the system is constantly charged 24/7, very low pressure between 1.5 and 2.5 psi. So it basically serves as an underground reservoir for any plant that has roots to extract water and nutrients from it when it needs it. If it doesn't need it, it's not going to extract it. So how does that work? The polymer that's inside of the tubing creates a bond with the water. So because even though it's a microporous tubing and there's water inside of it and it's charged, nothing's going to come out of the tubing if there's no external force because of that bond that's formed with the polymer. Now, the chemical exudates that plants put into the soil through photosynthesis actually interacts with the tubing, has a stronger affinity for water than the bond that's created with the polymer. So when those root signals are in the soil and they're in the general vicinity of the tubing, it's going to be enough to draw the water out. So it's kind of a long, drawn-out scientific explanation. That's as far as my understanding goes. I'm not the one that developed the technology, but that's kind of how it works. So it's super cool, based in organic chemistry. The tubing, obviously, it's microporous, so it's got variable flow rates throughout the system, meaning you could have a plant here, that uses around 5 gallons a day, and one plant right next to it that uses double amount. It can all be on the same zone. You don't need to zone that off because the tubing is variable flow rate. So there's a lot of different benefits. I don't want to ramble on too long, but it's pretty neat. You can kind of put the pieces together once you understand it.
So what crops and markets are you in now?
The company in 2020 won an award at the Global Forum for Innovation in Agriculture and was selected by the Abu Dhabi Investment Office to do a food security and R&D program. So at that time, the company kind of moved over there, and we started in Abu Dhabi, the UAE, Dubai, the Middle East, and slowly have kind of been expanding out from there. Big crops are, we've worked with pretty much everything, and the system works. Now, the practicality in terms of actually, growing stuff and farming and harvesting practices, that all comes into play. But the basic technology works with every crops. Where we've seen the best results and the easiest, I guess, converting from other forms to our forms where there's not, you don't have to change a ton of your practices, is things like cucumbers, tomatoes. We've done sweet corn, peppers, and then a lot of nut trees and fruit trees, date palms, citrus trees, things like that. It's very, we've had remarkable results. So.
And what's your go-to-market strategy? Do you sell direct to growers or through different kinds of distributors, or how do you do that?
A little bit of both. So we're going through distributor. Over in Abu Dhabi, we're going through distributors because there's much more of a market. Here, obviously, we're a little bit newer as we're expanding. We're kind of coming back here to the North American market. We haven't been very active. So it's a combination of using distributors and going directly to growers that are willing to adopt these technologies, trial them, get some data on them, see how it performs, see if it works with how they're currently doing their, farming, and then going from there. So it's kind of a hybrid of both, depending on where we're at. At some point, it'll be strictly distributors, though, I'd imagine.
And how long have you been in business?
Since 2019. So the technology was developed, I don't know exactly a year, about 20 years ago, though. And then it went through about 12, 13 years of R&D before it actually came to market. 2019 is when they launched.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you were in our Freshfield Catalyst Accelerator program. It's great to have you. Can you talk a little bit about what that experience was like for you and what you learned, and if there's like some tangible, without giving client names, but some tangible benefits that you got and some of the relationships that you built?
Yeah. Overall, it was an excellent program, excellent experience, personally and, for the company as well. Two main things that I got out of it were, number one, insight, and it was valuable insight from these, in my instance, the growers. Those are the ones that, I was kind of paying attention to. Number one, what they look for in new technologies and things like that, but number two, what their adoption process is. What are they looking for? What do they do trials? Do they have an R&D facility? Do they even have resources? Everyone's a little bit different, but even to understand how these different organizations and growers and producers go about this stuff is very important insight. And then the networking as well through the mentorship program. We were very fortunate to have a great mentor who, again, gave us valuable insight, but also put us in communication with, he has a lot of contacts that he thinks people are open to new technology. He's also able to help where he thinks our technology, our system would fit the best without a grower having to, jump through a bunch of hoops to adopt our technology. So I would say that the overall insight and then some of the contacts that we made and connections and we're able to, get some different things going. Those two things have been very valuable.
Oh, that's excellent. I think really looking at how people adopt technology, like you said, there's a wide variety of how different growers do it and how you get in there. But
Right.
The opportunity that we had to be out in the field and just listen to them about what their problems are and then how they think about it. And so I think it orients you differently of how, to remember that I'm solving their problem,
Right.
and then, how do you engage with them in a way to solve their problem, not I'm just going to tell you about my product. So I think it's
Exactly.
super
Finding
helpful.
exactly where it fits into the mix is important because we're on one end, they're on the complete other end, and then you can kind of figure out how to come together versus just, here's our
Here
technology,
it is.
this is what it does. Yeah.
Exactly. So the show floor hasn't opened yet, but you've been down there and looked at
Yes.
your booth and seen the floor. So what do you think about the show, and what do you hope to get out of it?
My initial reaction was wow, a lot going on. It took me a minute to find our booth.
And it's a long walk to everywhere.
Yeah, long walk. You can make sure if you're walking in, one entrance, make sure you walk out the same one. If you go out a different exit, it's gonna take you a while to figure out where you're at. I'm just impressed by the volume of companies and exhibitors here, to be honest. Obviously, when I was walking through, we were still setting things up, but I'm looking forward to just gaining, I guess, an overall familiarity with a lot of these companies. Obviously, I'm very excited to exhibit and answer questions, but I'm also excited to kind of walk the floor and see what's out there. There's a lot of, just walking through today, there's a lot of things that companies and organizations that I'm not familiar with that I'm looking forward to. And then obviously the networking aspect, like any other show that you go to, just building connections and things like that.
And don't forget the samples. Like most of these, they'll have free samples, and
That's
they're
a good-
amazing. They're so
That's
amazing.
a good point. There weren't any there today, which is why I didn't bring it up. But I'm
That's right.
absolutely looking forward to that.
Yeah, you get to try everything. I hardly
The bar's
eat.
been set pretty high as far as the samples go.
Exactly. When I come here, I hardly eat meals because I just eat my way through the
Right.
show.
Yeah, you
because
just
the food's
graze
so
throughout
good.
the show.
That's
Yeah.
right.
That's the
A
way to
little
do
more
it.
pineapple.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited for that.
Well, thank you so much for being part of the program and coming, and wish you the best show. And thanks to our listeners for listening to Bryce and his technology, and we'll talk to you again. I will turn it over to you, Michael, and introduce yourself and the company and what you're working on.
Well, thanks very much, Vonnie. It's a real pleasure to be here, very exciting. So I'm Michael Salvador. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Mirai Solar. And Mirai Solar is primarily a solar energy company. We develop, let's say, a unique type of photovoltaics of solar energy, which is photovoltaic shading. So we try to come in and replace passive shades in agriculture with photovoltaically enhanced shading so that people and customers can actually capitalize on their shading and use the blocked sunlight to generate electricity.
Where are you in the commercialization process? Do you have customers? Are you testing?
Yeah, so we are still pre-commercial. We are developing the technology. We are running pilots with multiple entities. We actually, which might be interesting for the audience, we came out of Saudi Arabia originally because the founders at a given moment in time of their lives were all in Saudi. And so we spun the company out of a local university there. We received generous funding, I would say, which helped us expand into different areas, including the US. So we are running pilots at the moment with customers and with research institutions. One maybe interesting example is a system that we just finished in California with the University of California SCREC called the South Center Recreational Agricultural Science, where actually people can come and visit and see how the system looks
Where is
like.
it?
It's in Irvine.
Okay.
It's called SCREC.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and so we are at the stage where we are demonstrating the technology, as I was saying, with research institutions, customers, and achieving product certification as part of our commercialization process.
So what's the biggest benefit to a customer? Is it the energy that's produced? Is it the benefit to the crop underneath it? What are the biggest benefits?
Yes, so shading is quite ubiquitously used in agriculture, so that's the benefit per se for the crop, to protect the crop from excessive sunlight. And as you can imagine, if you can make use of the blocked sunlight to generate electricity locally, you can use that clean electricity to reduce costs associated with farming, production, processing of food as well, and thereby reducing the carbon footprint of agricultural in a broad sense.
And do you need to be crop specific, or does what crops have you looked at and what seems to work the best?
Yes. So as you can imagine, it works best with crops that like shade.
Yeah.
So you would not put this necessarily under tomato, I would say, but it works very well with greeny leaves, with lettuce, with herbs. We are exploring grapes as well. We have one system in a vineyard in Germany at the moment that we're exploring, and even vineyards in the US seem to be interested. generally speaking, crops that like shading. Berries is a very good example, actually. Berries is a market we are currently trying to understand if there's potential need and also benefit for the industry.
And does it work in any kind of covered structure? You don't have to build a greenhouse around this, right? You can go in and retrofit?
Correct. So that's a very good point. We actually started with greenhousing, where we would simply come in and replace the existing shade, which is usually horizontal, and install ours instead. A very simple drop-in solution, I would say, where we remove the old shade, put in our shade using the same system, so the same retraction system, the same motorization and control, which is very neat. But we don't have to do it indoors. We actually have been doing it outdoors as well. In that case, we would have to build a structure.
Okay, so you would build like a frame.
Exactly, like a frame type structure. It's a hanging mechanism, so very different, I should say, that from a conventional solar panel. Imagine you have a U-shaped structure, and several feet apart, you repeat that structure, and you pull wires in between. And so the panels will then hang on those wires and slide on those wires, so that you can open and close them on demand, so that you can give the plants the light that they actually need.
So what's the return on investment to a grower in an outside situation? Do they get higher yields? Is it the electricity that they get? How do you figure the ROI?
So in terms of yields, I would say as long as they use the shading in the same way as their conventional shading, I would expect, and that's what we see, the yield remains the same. So there's no benefit in terms of yield, I would say. The benefit is obviously from the electricity generation.
Yeah.
And that depends heavily on the cost of electricity locally. You know, it's heavily dependent on the state where you are. California is, for example, a scenario that we like because cost of electricity is higher than elsewhere. So we are looking at payback times around 4 or 5 years, which is very similar to a conventional PV system.
Yeah. Do you see a greater need for your product with all the pressures of climate change? You know, do you think that we're going to see places where it's hotter and maybe the sun's more intense or for maybe longer of the year, and so your product kind of fits in as a solution so we can continue to grow where, you know, we might not be able to?
Yes, that's exactly the case. We are looking primarily and seeing main benefits in hot climates and in climates that are suffering from, you know, excessive heat at the moment. And that we believe the technology will help reduce the stress on the plant. So it will have a dual benefit. It will help the plants and it will help extend the harvest as well.
Excellent. So your company was part of our Fresh Field Catalyst Accelerator program this year. Can you talk a little bit about some of the benefits to the company and how, if this was a good thing for you to be involved in?
It was very good, as you can imagine, for a company that comes from a field that is very different from the field that we actually want to penetrate with the technology. So we are solar guys, solar engineers that want to generate and create a product for the agricultural field. And so we have to make those connections, and for that purpose, the program was excellent. I remember, and I still, you know, working on with our mentor. He has been excellent in, you know, making those connections for us, identifying, you know, main markets and markets that could be of primary use for us, and that we should explore according to his guidance. So I would say main help at the moment in terms of networking, in terms of connections, in terms of finding the right people with the right mindset, with our mindset that understand the value of renewable energy and of sustainability, obviously.
And this is the first time you've been to the show, I assume?
Very first time.
So what do you think? You just opened this morning, you're down on the floor?
We were here yesterday as well, so we had a glimpse. It's fantastic. Primarily, as I was saying, it will be a day where we will try to mainly go from booth to booth, you know, introduce our technology, see where we think they are the best fits, and look for those people with the same mindset as us and that hopefully want to try the technology. That's would be the main, I think the main outcome for us would be to find businesses that see benefits for their businesses and would like to try it with us.
Great.
Well, thanks for being here, and I hope you have great success in the show. And thanks for being part of the accelerator as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was very exciting so far. Thank you very much.
Thanks for tuning in to Fresh Takes on Tech. See you next time.